So I think within all of JWEL, we think about it as a worldwide effort that we're looking to create here. That doesn't mean that we exclude the United States from that. Certainly our neighbors, literally our neighbors, are important as well as people on the other side of the world. But we do think about that in a global context. And as we do move around the world and think about these different kinds of problems, we have to think about what are the unique attributes to those? How do we solve those in ways that are both locally sensitive and draw upon our expertise? I think that one of the things we want to try to do is think about ways that we can, even if the solutions in each one of those places is unique, we want to think about the processes as being things that we can actually support and sustain at some sort of scalable level. We had a large project in India that we've been working on for several years. And while the specifics of the curriculum and teacher professional development that we've been doing in that project may not be things that we can just drop down into another country, we think a lot about the processes that we've been working with in that context and how we can apply those processes in another context. And I think as we try to work on sort of large-scale problems within JWEL, we need to think about how we scale those processes from one place to another as we work around the world. JWEL is fundamentally about partnerships and collaboration, and we're trying to create a consortium here to work together with people around the world to solve the problems that different kinds of entities are having. As we work across the different levels, so between workforce and university, sometimes the people that we think about or the organizations that we think about being the members of that consortium are the ones who will actually join on their own behalf. So a university might want to be looking to improve their engineering education, they might join JWEL. Within the PK-12 space, we think about it a little bit differently. A lot of the most needy schools and countries around the world may not be able to join on their own behalf. So if we're thinking about refugee education, for example, it's not the refugee camps that will have the resources to be able to join JWEL, but there might be another organization that joins on their behalf. So we do have to think about some of these unique partnerships in a way that's a little bit different than some of the other parts of JWEL. Where we have to think about both the organization that's joining, so that might be a foundation, it might be a corporation, it might be a government, as well as the folks who we're serving on the ground. And even then, there might even be yet another level in there. In many cases, we might be training people to actually work with people in each of those local contexts. So we might be thinking about the organization that's funding it, we might be thinking about the one who's doing sort of dissemination and preparation, then we might have yet another organization who's sort of the boots on the ground, being able to do the work in the schools or in the educational institutions that exist within those places. We think a lot about the ways that we can connect the different pieces of JWEL, and in some ways we don't even have to think too hard about it because there's a lot of natural connections between the different levels. So for example, when we think about schools of education that might exist to be preparing teachers to teach in K-12 schools. So we have to think about both the university in those cases, and we have to think about the K-12 systems within those cases. But we also think the connection to university education, obviously, in many cases we hope that students who participate in these programs will continue on in higher education, and what are the preparation that they'll need in order to do that. And certainly for workforce development, we think a lot about what are the demands of the modern workplace in each of these places that we're working, and how do we actually use those demands to help guide what we should be teaching at the pre-college level. In a lot of cases, the educational systems, the educational goals that we have are well out of date. They're sort of preparing, people talk about schools today preparing kids for the 19th century, maybe the early 20th century. They're at least 100 years out of date in many cases in terms of what are the things we're trying to do. So thinking about that connection to the workplace and what are the needs that they have and how do we actually make sure that people are prepared for both the specific skills as well as the lifelong learning that presumably